Hello and welcome. You're watching the special edition of Nation Wants to Grow as Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presented her 8th budget. The big takeaway of the budget 2025 was a big booster that was provided to the middle class this time. And to know more about it, we are joined in by a very special guest. We have with us Mr. Shailesh Haribhakti, who is the chairman of Shailesh Haribhakti and Associates. We have with us Pallavi Denodia, who is co-chair of Direct Tax Committee of PhD Chamber of Commerce. And also a direct tax expert, and we have Mr. Amarpal Chadha, who is a tax partner at EY India. Thank you everyone for joining us. Coming to you, Mr. Haribhakti, we know that Finance Minister has given enough to the middle class. What is your sense? How is it going to impact the growth? Because you are someone who has an extensive viewpoint on the growth and GDP. So I would like to start off with you.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is going to be a phenomenal force multiplier. 1 lakh crores of tax sacrifice will be in the hands of people of India. And I think that has a phenomenal multiplier impact. A large portion of that 1 lakh crore that the government has foregone will come back as savings. And that has a multiplier of 7 or 8. Depending on where that saving is channelized through. And what is spent out of that will boost consumption. And so whichever way I look at it, there's going to be a powerful surge in terms of the whole wheel of economic activity getting pushed further. It's a virtuous cycle that has been created. Add to that all the additional resources that will be brought to bear on the entrepreneurial activity that you wish to do. Particularly noteworthy is they've gone deep down into SFGs and says self-help groups will be encouraged to become entrepreneurial. And their entrepreneurial journey will be funded and financed by specially allocated funds. That's just one example of how the force multiplier and the boost will happen in our economy.
Right. And Mr. Haribhakti, also the next point, Chief Economic Advisor on the day when the budget was presented, he said that this move on the direct tax front and on the personal income tax front will push the GDP by 10%. So what is your take on that?
You know, my own calculations are showing that we need to get out of this mindset of 7% of GDP. The nominal GDP that they are recognizing at 10%, I think is going to be met quite easily. But the way that the whole economy is poised for takeoff, I can see this going up by 20-30% easily and actually doubling over a period of time.
Right.
And I believe that is very much feasible. India's time has come.
Right. Coming to you, Mr. Chadha, ever since the budget is presented in whatever setting I am going into and interacting with the people, some key question everyone is asking me, clarify what is the marginal relief, what are these rebates, how are we going to be taxed after this announcement? Can you just take us through quickly how this will transpire into reality and how this will impact the ceiling that has been increased and the announcements that have been made on the personal income tax front? Can you give us an example and tell our viewers that how it will impact their income?
Sure, Rajat. And I think it's the case, typical case of Dil Mange more kind of a discussion, because the finance minister was very clear. I didn't see her talking in ambiguous terms when she said that the limit is being increased to 12 lakhs and it is through a rebate. So that would mean that the current rebate, which was available of 25,000 rupees, has been extended now to 60,000. That would mean that if your income is up to 12 lakhs, there is no tax for you. So that's the biggest saving. But if your income is, let's say, 13 lakhs, it doesn't mean that you would have no tax till 12 lakhs and you will be taxed only on 1 lakh. It would mean that your tax will start getting computed by the different slabs that have been brought in. The advantage that people do get, everyone gets, you and me also get, is where the 3 lakh slab has moved to 4 lakh. and some of the slabs have moved forward. For example, the maximum marginal rate of 30%, we used to get triggered at 15 lakhs, now gets triggered only at 24 lakhs. So everyone's getting an advantage, but the amounts could vary from a 35,000 to up to 1 lakh 40,000, 1 lakh 30,000, depending upon the income level of the individual.
Right.
Everyone's benefit, but this does not mean that there is zero tax till 12 lakhs for everyone. Just to clarify and emphasize on that point.
Right. And also, what is the marginal relief and how it will play out?
So see, marginal relief has always been there. What it really means is that when your total tax, let's say your income is up to 12 lakhs and then you have additional tax that is payable, your tax cannot exceed the income exceeding the threshold amount.
Right.
So you get a marginal relief when your tax is computed, and if it is exceeding the income exceeding 12 lakh, it will be capped at that. It was also, Rajat, earlier in place, nothing new. So the same principles have been carried forward, only the threshold is being moved.
Right. Coming to you, Pallavi, we also know that the government has incentivized enough to people to move to the newer tax regime. We also know that 74% people have already transitioned to newer tax regime, and with this, number can shoot up to 100%. But do you feel that there were some forcible investment that people were supposed to do to get the standard deductions under the older tax regime, which might not be which is not the case in the newer tax regime? So, what is your take on that?
So Rajat, I feel that, there was, our Act is of 1961. So in that era, when this forcible investment through tax benefit was started by the government, it was, I think, to assure the people that they stand or they recommend such investments to be done, and the tax relief was a consequence. I think over time, now in 2025 or in 2020, when the new tax regime came in, I think India has come of age. And we now no longer need the government to stand behind certain investment options. Our capital markets are definitely more developed than they were. Our regulatory system is robust. So today, I think the people of India are capable, and the regulatory environment, our capital markets together create an ecosystem that allows for us to invest where each of us want to, instead of having to invest where the government wanted us to. So I think it's a great measure, and it's a good thing, in my view.
Right. Coming to you, Mr. Haribhakti, we also know that there is a drastic jump as far as the cutoff, if the slab is concerned, from 7 lakh to 12 lakh. When you look at the peers, developing economies across the world, do you feel that how do you compare our taxation system with them, considering the changes that we have made recently in our budget?
No, we should flex this discussion by the per capita income that India has. We are at a per capita income which is vastly different from the US and even China.
Right.
And therefore, those comparisons will become kind of odious. But if you ask me whether, given our structure of income and the way that the breakdown happens in terms of how many people earn up to, let's say, 12 lakhs. So a huge 1 crore taxpayers have been relieved from the net of tax. Now, that is the number which nowhere else in the world you will find. So we need to look at our structure and our numbers and our per capita to give an answer to this. Suffice to say that this is a very significant historical relief that has been given to the middle class. It is unprecedented in the history of India. I don't remember. I've been a practitioner for 50 years, and I don't believe a single budget which has done this much for the middle class taxpayer.
Right. Coming to you, Mr. Chadha, we also know that one another announcement was taking that income tax bill to the parliament this week, and also to simplify it further. How do you see it, and what would you like to see it? Because I interviewed CBDT chief 2 days back, and he said in an interview with Republic Business that size of income tax activity reduced by half. It will going to be much more condensed. So how do you see it, the simplification of taxation and the bill that is going to be presented in the parliament this week?
So Rajat, it's very interesting. We are all looking forward to it. The size in this case really doesn't matter, because it is all about how the provisions will be drafted. And I think the intent statement has been made very clear by the finance minister itself, saying that it will be simple, it will be easy to interpret, and also make it easy for tax authorities to administer. So I think if a combination of all this really comes out in a much shortened version, that's absolutely great. But as my co-panelist here would agree that in the tax jurisdiction, especially given Mr. Haribhakti's experience in this field, we've seen many of these evolve over a period, and there is a lot of history attached to each provision. So if I have to interpret a new change, I cannot ignore what has been the history of how these provisions have developed. But yes, for a taxpayer, and typically now in the Zen world, we are the people who like to read the tax manuals or the tax act itself. It'll be nice to have something which can be used, understood well, and with the whole evolving AI world, if a tax act is something which can be used to understand and interpret better by the current generation, I think it's a very, very welcome step. We are all looking forward to it as tax professionals.
Right. And what is your opinion, Pallavi, as far as the simplification of taxation is concerned? Bill is going to be presented in the parliament this week, then it will go to standing committee. So what is your take? What would you like to see in the simplification, and how do you see this move?
So I've been fortunate, Rajat. Our chamber has been interacting with the government over the last 6 months since this announcement in July. And the stakeholders have always come forth with an endeavor to ask what can be done better, simpler, and easier.
Right.
So I think the intent is there to create an easier tax system. There's constant chatter about we being one of the most complex tax economies of the world. So I think the endeavor is in the right place. And like our Honorable Finance Minister said, that at the quarter end of the 21st century, as India steps into the next journey to Viksit Bharat, I think tax will play an important role, and the simplification of that tax, I think, is a great step for our future.
Right. Coming to you, Mr. Bhakti, there is another announcement. The extension of a time limit to file your updated return for assessment has been increased from 2 years to 5 years. So how do you interpret this?
So I look at it in the context of the key word that the finance minister has used in her speech and in her interviews post the budget, which is trust. She has gone on record to keep re-emphasizing that now we want to trust our taxpayers. If somebody gives me a declaration that 2 of my house properties are self-occupied, then I'm going to believe them. I'm not going to question it. It is in the same light that this extension. So if I've forgotten to make an amendment to my return, or if I find later on that my computation of cap gains was not right, or if some other error I discover on my own, then I should be given the chance to rectify myself and pay the balance tax or claim a refund. And the government gives me that trust that, yes, what I will file and what I will declare is something that is honest and truthful and backed by evidence. That's the point that is being made.
Also, yes, absolutely. Mr. Haribhakti, also we know that Finance Minister also said just because of making these changes, there is 1 lakh crore revenue foregone. Because of this, do you think the consumption revival to that tune will happen? Because the objective this time was to give more disposable income in the hand of the people to revive the consumption, because we are witnessing subdued demand and consumption at the same time in the economy. So what will be the cascading positive effect of the move that we have seen, and how are we going to compensate for 1 lakh crore of revenue foregone?
Right. So if you look at the arithmetic of the budget, and if I look at the way the numbers have been broken down, I'm very satisfied that the budget is made on sensible grounds. So it's not as if our fiscal deficit is going to be way off the 4.4 budget that has been prescribed. And the levers in the hands of the finance minister are many. You can tweak subsidies, you can tweak disinvestment, you can tweak the tax collections, you can tweak many things in order to make the arithmetic of the budget right. But I feel that they have made reasonable assumptions to come to the conclusion on what might be the tax gathering, even after giving away this relief. And let us not forget that there is what is called the tax buoyancy factor, which arises because of the larger trust that the finance minister has placed in all of us, that we will declare honestly full income. And when that starts happening at scale, you will see a natural increment. Let's also not forget that the tax information network of the government of India is about the best in the world.
Okay.
And the manner in which the government is able to send us sharp notices on things that we can't even imagine is a absolute testimony to the fact that government has used digital, AI, and all the latest technologies to great effect.
Right.
So all of this is the final end of reforms in taxation, direct taxation. And our direct tax to GDP ratio is going to start approaching the developed world ratio in a short period of time, which is a fantastic achievement.
Right, wonderful. Mr. Chadha, we also know that the one demand that everyone was having, in fact, I read a lot of the pre-budget consultation pointers, and many industry chambers also called for it, many experts have also called for it, abolition of a security transaction tax. As the young investors are flocking to the market, they were asking for the abolition of STT, but this time the government has increased the target by 40%. As far as STT is concerned. So do you think that this is to offset the losses that they are going to make on income tax front?
So Rajat, as Mr. Haribhakti was also saying, see, the government has to balance. But I don't think just one change on the security transaction tax is that material. What the government has really delivered is a big one. See, what we are talking about is huge money directly in the hands of people. So obviously it will be balanced against some of the things which have been continued and nothing has been increased. So you haven't seen any change on the capital tax regime. There is in fact further simplification on the TDS, TCS front, putting in more money in the hands of people at a ready cash spent level. So all put together, I don't think this is such a showdowner that an STT hasn't been reduced and stuff like that. No impact would be seen because of these.
Right. And I will come to each one of you with the last question that I have, and that is, as the government and this government has initiated the tax reforms and the journey revamping the entire taxing ecosystem in the country, what more you would like to see going forward? Let's start with Pallavi first. So Pallavi, what more you would like to see going forward?
So honestly, I am really looking forward to the new tax code. And once it's open for stakeholder comment, I think there we can all give more of our inputs and more of our expectations. But today, I think what the budget has delivered, like Mr. Haribhakti and my fellow co-panelist has said, is a game changer. And therefore, I think a lot has already been done. The new tax code, I'm very hopeful for, looking forward to seeing what can be done. But I think simplification, trust, ease of compliance, ease of interpretation and understanding. I think those are the long-term goals that I'm looking to see in the new code.
Right. Mr. Chadha, what would you like to see going forward as far as this revamping the whole taxation ecosystem in the country is concerned?
Rajat, I think Pallavi has very clearly defined all that I also had on mind, but I would like to see more digitalization and more trust, if I have to pick one point, being amplified in the behavior. So if the notices are more honored and no ambiguous assessments are done, it will really help build that trust even more and deliver on it.
Yes. Mr. Haribhakti, your concluding remarks, what do you see going forward as far as taxation is concerned?
So I see an AI-optimized, real-time, personalized tax rate regime coming in at some point. I also see tax-free income for AI and digital gig work. You know, the entire way in which India works and India performs its tasks is changing. And so I want this to happen. And then I want wealth creation model, tax-free compounding for 25 plus years. If you keep an asset for 25 years, you need to get an exemption. And a zero tax, hyper-local entrepreneurship zone-driven tax framework. And finally, some tax-free green and social impact income, so that our tax system becomes an optimized economic growth engine.
Thank you, Mr. Haribhakti. Thank you, Pallavi, and thank you, Mr. Chadha, for joining us and explaining it
Great.
to our viewers what it means for the economy and for their income as well. Thank you, gentlemen, and Pallavi, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
So, well, we heard experts decoding what this budget means for their income and the taxation. The one big takeaway is that trust is the key that government is trying to establish as far as taxation is concerned. But going ahead, it will be interesting to see how the simplification is going to pan out as this government will table the bill in the parliament this week.